Hello and welcome to the rest of lesson 1.3. And so I already have this really good lesson recorded for 1.3, or a really great lesson recorded on factoring polynomials, just kind of an introduction to factoring trinomials. And so I thought I would use that video, but there's a little bit more I wanted to add on for our Math 111. Okay, and it all has to do with something that I told you back in lesson 1.2, just last lesson. One thing I wanted you to know is that you should always start, the first thing you should always try to do is to pull out a GCF. This should be the first place you always go. And then you continue on with any other methods that you've learned. And so I have some examples. That's all I want to do since you've watched the last video, is I'd like to give some examples that are going to require us to pull out a GCF first before we go on with factoring like we did in the lesson that I provided for 1.3, or the first video for 1.3. So this will be short, not as long as the lesson 1.3 that I shared with you. All right, so what we're going to do is, before we try finding the things that multiply to 30 and add to 5, or negative 30 and negative 5, we're going to look for a GCF. And you should be able to look at this and be kind of quick. Is there a number that divides evenly into all three terms? And you used to say, oh my, 5 will divide evenly into all three terms. Because if I divide 5 into this, I'll just be left with x squared. If I divide 5 into that term, I would be left with x. If I divide 5 into this term, I'll be left with minus 6. And so we did find a GCF, and we can factor it out. Now I need to just continue factoring, and so I'll focus mainly on this part to see if it factors anymore. And the answer is yes, it does factor some more. So we'll factor this exactly like we did all the others in the previous, or the lesson 1.3 video. So we look here and we see negative 6, and you need to tell me all the things that multiply to negative 6. And you should say like negative 1 and 6, negative 2 and 3, 2 and negative 3, 1 and negative 6. So all of these multiply to negative 6. Now let's look at our middle term. We want it to add. There's no number showing there, but we know that's an understood negative 1. So we'd like these things to add. That's a horrible plus sign. Let's say add. We'd like it to add to negative 1. So let's see. Negative 1 and 6 adds to 5. That's not it. Negative 2 and 3 that adds to positive 1. That's not it either. 2 and negative 3. Oh, that's negative 1. That's it. But just for continuity, or let's go 1 plus negative 6. That's negative 5. That's not it either. So these are the two numbers, a positive 2 and a negative 3, that we're going to use to factor this into. Now remember, when we factor it, we break it into two sets of parentheses, and the first terms of these two sets of parentheses are what multiply to give us the first term here, x squared. So x times x gives us x squared. And these secondary terms, or the second terms, are going to be these numbers that we found, positive 2, so plus 2, and negative 3, so minus 3. And we're done. And notice that in the video I posted for lesson 1.3, I didn't ever have any GCFs to pull out, so you would have just done this part. But notice that I still have the 5 sitting here. That's multiplied by this. That's one of the factors. That's a piece of this. And so I factored out the GCF, and then I can still handle factoring this exactly like we've been handling it. So that's not super duper difficult to factor. Let's do one more example. I told you this was just a short addition, or an add-on to lesson 1.3. One more example, and I'll turn you loose, and we'll be done with this. Let's see. Oh, why does my example have to be a 5 again? Let's see. Do I have a better one? Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a really good one. Let's go with this example. So we'll go with 6x to the third plus 24x squared minus 30x. And so what we'll want to do is use those skills from last lesson and say, oh, we need to pull out a GCF. And hopefully you notice that all three terms have in common a 6 and an x. I can factor this out of all three terms. So if I do that, if I factor a 6 and an x out of this, I'm left with x squared. If I factor a 6 and an x out of this, I'm left with positive, or plus 4x. And if I factor a 6 and an x out of here, I'm left with minus 5. Okay. All right, hopefully that looks pretty good. Now, let's see if we can factor this piece in here a little bit more. I know that I'm going to have 6x floating out front of it, but can I factor this trinomial further into two binomials? And so we'll do the same thing. Look at the last term. It's -5, so I want all the pairs of numbers that multiply to -5. Luckily for us, there's not many. There's -1 times 5, and there's 1 times -5. Now let's see, we would like them to add to +4. We'd like it to add to +4. So let's see, -1 plus 5, that's +4. 1 plus -5, that's -4. So this isn't it. So there we go. Let's see, I'll write it in a different color so it pops. So when we go to factor this trinomial right here, I always know these first two terms when I have a very simple trinomial with nothing out front of x squared are going to be x and x. And then my other two numbers are going to be -1 and +5, or -1 and +5. So there, I've factored it. So just the warning, or not the warning, but there's just a heads up that you should look for a GCF before you start anything. Every time, any factoring technique, that's the first place we should look is, can I pull out a GCF? All right. Well, that's it for this. I'll turn you loose. Good luck on your homework. Email me if you need me.